Hello, and welcome to Entangled, the podcast where we explore the science of consciousness, the true nature of reality, and what it means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Danny Knowles, founder of Network Wellness Center in Boulder, Colorado. In this conversation, Danny describes how his health journey led him to the field of chiropractic, the largest drugless healing modality in the world. We discuss the unity between man the physical and man the spiritual. Danny then explains the difference between NetworkSpinal care and those of other Western chiropractors, which look more like physical therapy. Danny explains the spinal gateways tied to our nervous system, that everything is energy, and how their chiropractic care breaks the holding patterns that keep us trapped in ill health. We discuss how to optimize compromised nervous systems in the face of stress and to increase the bandwidth of frequency we are able to experience. Danny describes how they turn nerves from suck to joy through a process of discover, transform, awaken, and integrate. I ask Danny how he goes about adjusting patients, and Danny explains anchorage points, the spinal cord, and nerve fibers. We discuss how posture is a window to the structure of your nerve system, and that the heart, which has 40,000 neurons, can be considered a second brain. Next, we consider whether the increase in excess deaths in recent years could have resulted from mRNA vaccines. We conclude the conversation by discussing why this is a spiritual time to be working in the healing arts. This outro is titled Discover, Transform, Awaken, Integrate. Outros are available for this and all episodes at entangledpodcast.substack.com. Music from the show is available on the Spotify playlist Entangled the Vibes. If you like the show, please drop a 5-star review and subscribe on Substack, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please enjoy the episode. Dr. Danny Knowles, thank you so much for joining the Entangled podcast this afternoon.
I am grateful to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on and for the fantastic chiropractic you've been performing for me for the last several months.
Well, something we say all the time is we feel like it's a privilege and an honor to care for someone. Health is people's most valuable asset, and next to their time and their money, those three things: health, time, and money. And if they choose to trust us with their health and put their time and money in our office, that's a privilege and it's an honor. And it's something to, really value. And so I appreciate the opportunity to care for you.
Well, thank you. And, it's definitely made huge improvements in my life. And so, we can get into that at some point, but would love to just start out, if you wouldn't mind, giving the listeners some of your own background and how you got involved in chiropractic.
Well, that's quite a story. I hope they're interested. So, I really, how I really got involved was my own health journey. Really, we give a lot of lip service to health in our culture. And a lot of times we think how we feel on the particular day or how we look is what health is, especially in the US. And when you actually have real life health situations, you realize it's so much more. And my first 2 years of life, I had 12 rounds of antibiotics for ear infections, meaning basically every time I had an ear infection, people did what they were told to do. My mom took me to the doctor, and every time they just gave me antibiotics. 2 of the times I had severe dehydration and had to be rushed to the hospital and incubated. And that basically, that kind of exposure that, even to an adult, but I was under 2, it affected my immune system. I was often ill, often sick, and that turned into really bad allergies. And I had never had allergies before, but I was seemingly allergic to everything as a teen. And, when you're the sick kid in the class or the kid that's not healthy often, you're growing up in the Bronx, which are where I was in a little apartment, you tend to, I was really into Little League, and I would basically play bench. You're not picked. So that was me. And then I was really often ill, and this neighbor knocked on our door and said he was concerned. He saw me going back and forth from school and having health challenges. He said, "You got to do something." And said, yeah, my mom said I didn't want to give her any medications. We'd been down that road and she wasn't giving me anything anymore. I just kind of struggled. She said, well, I'll go find a doctor for your son. He went to this thing called a library. Many people don't remember those. And, he went to the library and came back and said, you got to take him to a chiropractor. It's the world. He said the magic words. It's the world's largest drugless healing art. That's all my mom had to say here. And she took me and my allergies went away pretty darn quick. And, or within a month or two or something. And for a mom that's dealt with this, that's like overnight. And so she actually went to chiropractic school herself. Based upon that, she was going to go back in some health profession, but that was enough to push her in that direction. And so then I was in high school and she was in chiropractic school. And I was, like any other high school or college person, trying to figure out where their direction in life. But then she met another chiropractor and I started to get more and more excited. And I ended up deciding, this is what I was passionate about.
Wow. What do you think it was that it made it important to your mother that it was a drugless field?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think she had this value system, and the value system that the body heals itself, and you want to put good things into the body and not put bad things. I don't know if she would say this. However, if something that's dangerous for a healthy person, why do you want to put in someone's ill and think it's going to make them better? And there are times when medications are life-saving, for sure. There's times when surgeries are life-saving. I've had that experience myself in my own health. And at the same time, I think she just didn't want to utilize those unless they were absolutely needed. And there's ways to strengthen the body. And is there a way to do that and trust the body's own innate capacity to heal?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's very cool. And, when you talk about chiropractic, to me, it feels like there's a pretty broad range of ways that, different doctors practice chiropractic. And part of what was cool about it, for myself, I say I come from more of like Western allopathic kind of philosophy. And then that's changed very, very dramatically over the last couple of years, where now I actually would say I'm quite the opposite and much more Eastern Ayurvedic focused. But what I think is cool about chiropractic for a lot of folks is it's a really nice way to bridge that gap. So I guess my question to you is how do you think about the spectrum of healthcare from those different poles of allopathic versus, Ayurvedic, and then where does chiropractic, kind of fit into all of that?
It's very interesting. Truly, so often things that are Eastern or Ayurvedic or other healing arts become Westernized or allopathized. And allopathized meaning that we're going to treat the condition or symptom as compared to make the body healthier or contribute to the body being healthy. Now, realize there is a time and place to treat a symptom or disease and address it, and that can be life-saving. And that's true in that or crisis care. That's where American healthcare, Western healthcare thrives. And our trauma and crisis system is pretty amazing. And at the same time, you said Ayurveda. I'll say, for example, acupuncture. Acupuncture, the underlying initial focus of acupuncture was to optimize qi. But somehow people now use acupuncture, say, oh, well, acupuncture fixed my headaches. Well, that really wasn't the initial impetus for acupuncture. That's allopathizing the healing art. And chiropractic very much has been allopathized. It was born in the US, actually by a Canadian magnetic healer in Iowa, and discovered it and named it and developed it, and his family continued to develop. However, its original focus was not about really, if you read his writings, they were very spiritual and about connecting the physical with man, the spiritual, and about the vibration oscillation of the body, and how there's an innate wisdom, and how that is a subset of the universal intelligence, and how there's vibrations and molecular oscillation. When the spine and nerve system and the neuroskeleton's distorted, the person isn't an expression of the vibration they're meant to be. And somehow that became, as you know, if you kind of look up any average chiropractor, we'll just say conventional chiropractor on YouTube or Google, somehow it's become fixing neck pain, back pain, headaches. And that was not the impetus or the spark of chiropractic as a healing art. Just like acupuncture was about optimizing chi, conditions could change, but people need an optimal chi. You need an optimal nerve system, an optimal integrity of your spine and nerve system, whether you hurt or not, whether you are outwardly already abundantly, robustly healthy, or you have health challenges, whether you're taking lots of medications or lots of vitamins. No amount of vitamins or medications are going to alter the integrity of your spine and nerve system. There are things that you can do through spinal adjustive force applications to optimize the efficiency of the nervous system, the structure, and that may not be in an area that hurts. It may not involve moving a vertebra, and it may not be assessing conditions or diseases, but really assessing what's the energy efficiency of the nerve system, how well is the nerve system functioning in terms of coherence. Are the bones, joints, and discs in the best integrity? And whether you hurt or not, old or young, could that impact your longevity, your quality of life, enhance your life experience? And somehow, much of the chiropractic education and world has lost that, which is sad because it's an incredible healing art. And when you see some of the research, evidence, things that have been done, you realize that this is something that everybody needs to receive, whether they're ill or well.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I think my first exposure to chiropractic was as a kid. My mom and I got in a car accident and I was totally fine. They hit her side of the car, but, she's had back pains really ever since. And she went to chiropractic and, raved about it. And it definitely made her back much better. But my understanding was, is much more kind of a forceful kind of hands-on, pushing and pulling, like very intense. And that's very antithetical to the care that I've gotten at Network Wellness Center. So would love if you could just talk about, what specific style of chiropractic you've chosen to practice.
Well, see, here's the interesting thing. And like you said, you were in the car accident and you were okay. You were okay. Most likely your verbiage there is referring to nothing was hurting. Your nerve system probably was subluxated, distressed from the accident, and it probably was before you had the accident. And no one assessed it. I don't know that particular chiropractor did, but often people will say, I was in an accident, and well, were there other people in the car? There were 3 others, but they're okay. Well, they were in the same impact as you. How do you know that they weren't subluxated? Something didn't alter in the neurostructural integrity. But people tend to do that. Or the birth process. Often people have the first subluxation during the birth process, especially if it's a medical birth in the U.S., whether, you use forceps or just the medications that are given to a mom goes into the bloodstream of the child. And that can be a neurological insult. And, so many other things and things that happen just in the process of learning how to walk, and it can affect a person's nervous system. So unfortunately, so many people don't think like, well, I checked eyes, I checked my teeth, but did you check your spine? Or wait, I wait till I'm bad to check the integrity of the most important organ in your body, what you live your life through, your nerve system. So it's an interesting perspective versus that it's just something to be cared for. Now, with that, there's a whole breadth of ways that people adjust people. And a lot of conventional chiropractic looks more like physical therapy than actually what chiropractic was meant to be, which is impacting the integrity, the coherence, the efficiency of the nervous system so a person can be at their best. So, for example, through the history of the chiropractic profession, there's been dozens of approaches that actually didn't involve thrusting, that involved popping, cracking, making noises, jumping from the third rope on a person's back. There's been lots of them because people found, different doctors over the years found that there are ways to apply forces that somehow would elicit the body's innate wisdom to make a change. Now, our particular approach, NetworkSpinal, was developed by Dr. Donnie Epstein. It's gone through several evolutions and involves very gentle forces in most cases about the amount of pressure you put on a closed eye. And usually you say that and people are like, well, how could that work? Well, you know what? I'm trying to remember the principle, but there's a physics principle about, even if you just rub your hands together, the heat that's made, the Pauli principle, just the heat that's made by that changes every atom in the universe. Well, if just this is going to change every atom in the universe, why are you asking, how does this change a bone, right? So here's the thing. I have this cell phone here. We all carry these a little bit too much. I have this cell phone that I'm holding, and people know what's more important. Jordan, your cell phone or your body? What's more intelligent? Your cell phone or your body? Right, your body's infinitely more important, more intelligent than a cell phone. However, we go to this thing, we can tap a piece of glass and can transfer money. You can swipe it on one way and it brings up a whole set of apps. Swipe it another way, it brings another set of apps. But if our body, you press on anywhere, touch an area, put a different angulation in skin, why would you think the app on the cell phone is more intelligent than your body? Your skin, and the fascia has direct connections neurologically that different tissue depths, different angulations are going to affect receptors that your brain is going to be able to, is going to receive. And with the right access points and the right force applications, that can actually change the patterns of how your neural behavior and how your spinal structure is reacting often to things that happened 5, 10, 20 years ago. People can have physical insults, chemical insults, emotional insults, that person's body responding as if it's still happening. We call it a facilitated loop. And then that loop becomes where it continues to contract musculature, changes tension in connective tissue, that the discs don't communicate appropriate information back to the brain in terms of where they're supposed to be. And that all is being modulated by your nerve system. When your nerve system has more coherent communication, just like lights being turned on in a room, it can make better decision making. But if the lights are dim, the radar system between, say, the receptors in your disc are going to communicate differently to the receptors in your brain. So what happens in the approach that we do, we're applying forces. So we're at particularly what we call spinal gateways, not to move bones, but to remind the resident intelligence that it's more amazing than it has been, and that it's possible to make change that has not been able to, that maybe it didn't have the resourcefulness to make, or even the awareness because the lights were off, because it was feeling around in the dark, because it wasn't appropriate information to respond to, or it was responding to information that was from a decade ago as if the thing was still going on in a loop.
Yeah.
Like a iPod, if people remember iPods, like an iPod on repeat.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's been so fascinating for me, as I've explored the nature of consciousness. And, I'd say in the chiropractic world, my, before I was introduced to you, the folks I'd learned the most from were Dr. Joe Dispenza, and then a good friend of mine named Dr. Charlotte Meyer, who's also been on the podcast, who's DC in St. Louis. And anyway, just learning about kind of that interconnectivity between physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy, and how they really are all the same. So, how do you think about energy as it relates to how energy as a whole kind of manifests as physical pain, but doesn't necessarily all have a physical cause, if you will?
Energy, everything is energy. In fact, there are several scientists have been quoted saying that, in regards to matter, there's no such thing as matter. Everything is energy, and also everything is the energy that you bring to your surroundings and what's your energetic state. What bandwidth you experience the world with. Because we tend to focus, for example, on circumstances, when you actually just shift your energy state, you can realize that maybe the circumstances are not even real. And what happens is we get in one perspective that everything that's happening is extremely real. And others, you can look at from a perspective or from a different vibration or from another dimension, realize that they're not real at all. So the thing about pain and energy is, for example, energy can be bound up in muscles, joints, discs, and bound up energy or resources and muscles are going to show up as one way. It's going to show them like spasms, trigger points. Energy bound up in vertebra is going to show up as restricted range of motion. It's going to show up as things stuck or curvatures. And energy bound up in the nerve system is yet going to show up as different patterns repeating. And so now, whether those manifest to a level of what's been bound becoming pain is to do with the vibration that they're at. And then if the person is at a level of stability that they can't make change, then that's going to reinforce that pain's not possible to change. And, some of the most amazing things that can shift is just really a force of instability, even one that is mild, can make all the change. You also got to think about pain. What do you mean by pain? Is it physical pain? Is it emotional pain? Is it the pain of things not changing? Is it the pain of things not changing fast enough? Is it the pain of past hurts? There's all kinds of pain, and often physical pains are reflections of the different types of pains that people are experiencing. Often people's pain of not growing can show up and manifest as physical pain, given the right limitation or addiction to stability. And think about a child, 2-year-old, throwing themselves to the ground into a temper tantrum. They're in pain. We don't necessarily think about pain. We say they're a kid having a temper tantrum, but at that point in their being, they're having pain, otherwise, and they're expressing it. Right? I'm not talking about physical pain, but they're having life pain. If someone says simply to them, look, it's Superman, all of a sudden the pain will stop. Because it's a instability being produced being pointed out to their system that somehow takes the attention to what their holding pattern is. So the thing is, really vital to all healing arts is understanding that everything's energy. Look, surgery has to involve energy. Acupuncture involves energy. There's energy between, a patient and physician prescribing a medication. There's an energetic exchange. There's always an energetic exchange. And what has to happen is, how is the energetic exchange being received? And what force of instability can move the system to more energy efficiency? It might be a word. It might be a food. It might be someone's touch. To break a pattern that their nerve system has been continuing to play, or the bony system or the muscular system. As chiropractors, our intention is to find where the axis points into the system, that this innocuous force, a spinal adjustive force, can entice the innate intelligence of the body to be receptive to change the one it's been behaving. And that end up shifting the structure. Unfortunately, frequently people just think, well, we just have to move a joint. Bones can move and things can probably make noise and not heal. And are you there to have something get jostled around and maybe feel a little bit better? Or ask, why is this happening? Why does it keep happening? What do I have to do, grow, learn from it?
For me, I've come to recognize, I think, the nervous system is arguably what is kind of most unique about humanity relative to the rest of the animal kingdom. And, I didn't really know much I still don't know anything about it, but I didn't really recognize how important it was until I started understanding, like you were talking about, the importance of consciousness and energy and everything. So how would you, guide folks who maybe aren't as familiar with some of these principles you're talking about? Like, how should they think about their spine and the interaction with the nervous system?
Well, here's the thing. You process your conscious reality through your nervous system. People think of their spine or their back or their nerves only when they're in pain. And then I'm going to give it attention. It's a common thing in Western reality is we're going to give something attention when it's the squeaky wheel, right? So I'm going to pay attention to my body or some part of my body when there's a problem, right? I don't really think about my eyes until I can't see. I don't really think about how amazing it is that I can digest food until I'm having a digestion problem. And that's not necessarily the best way to care for your health and well-being in any area. And your nervous system, your spine is no different. And for your health is not how you feel, it's how you function. If you can optimize parts of function of your body, that's the way to optimize your health. Your nervous system process is your conscious reality. It's what you live your life through to make your organs work and your body parts able to move. And your ability for it to process energy information has to do with your bandwidth. Understand, is there more information to process now than there was in, say, the 1920s? Like, a lot more, right? The cell phones of the 1980s, did they have as much bandwidth as the cell phones of today? Would you want to coordinate your life on a 1980s cell phone? Might it cause blockages, disruptions, challenges? Might you have less able to do? So realize, what bandwidth do you think your nervous system has to process? What bandwidth do you want it to process? Do you want it to be able to process LTE bandwidth? Or in today's world, do you need more bandwidth than that? So the bandwidth of your nervous system, as your nervous system gets less healthy, it has less bandwidth to process energy and information. And that inability to process energy and information, or the blockages or the lack of coherence, it's not as much a physical blockage as a lack of coherence, then creates energy inefficiency. And energy efficiency is what you crave relative to life. And having bandwidth to put energy towards healing, resources, and even just the circumstance of a person's life. Either you can be sidelined by the circumstances, they're overwhelming and be like the end of the world to you, or at a different bandwidth, it can be, I eat stress for breakfast. What stress? I optimize in the face of stress. And the energy in any system consistent with its nature, can be more effortless, more spontaneous, seemingly more magical as it reorganizes, grows, heals, transforms, or evolves. However, when that nervous system is compromised, there's a little less spontaneity, there's a little less magic, there's a little less effortlessness, there's efforting. And you have a choice, is how do you want your nerve system, what level of bandwidth do you want it to have? Because it's there to serve you, and you can either have it be more resourceful or less resourceful. Do you want a less resourceful nervous system or a more resourceful nervous system? It's really a basic concept. And the energy information that you have to process now, since, compared to 100 years ago, is infinitely more. Just think about the number of emails you have to respond to a day. Like, the demand on your nerve system, energy and information in and of itself creates a subluxation, creates incoherence, because there's only so much that you can take in with a compromised system. But what you want to have is a super energy rich, efficient system. You can try to run some of today's programs on a Commodore 64. It might be a challenge. And many people are running their lives, 2020 level lives, with hardware that hasn't been updated and has been overwhelmed, and then they wonder why they're having the various challenges they have. And that overwhelm will show up in different parts of a person's physiology. We may try to seek things to treat the overwhelm. However, without something to treat in and of itself, it's really wise to optimize the energy efficiency of your spine and nerve system. and have your brain have the greatest coherence it can have as it interacts with the information that we all have to process. So the intention is also really a main thing of, are you trying to get rid of something you don't like or optimize something? See, most of the time, relative to healthcare or our bodies, we tend to focus on what we want less of. And when we want less of something, that's when we'll give attention to, in this example, our nerve system, or it's when we'll give attention to some part that's bothering us, or maybe our relationships. However, there's something much better. Rather than for just focusing, well, I'm going to be concerned about my diet when I want to lose weight, or I'm concerned about my fitness when I'm overweight or I'm out of shape, or I'm concerned about my health when my longevity and mortality is threatened. What about, rather than saying I'm going to pay attention to my finances when the debt builds, that's when I give attention to it. Rather than saying I want to get rid of debt, how about focusing on I want abundance and prosperity? How about saying, only paying attention when I decide I don't want to have the pain, I want to have, instead focus on I want to be free to do the things I want to do. And think of your nerve system the same way, but your nervous system is going to impact everything else. So optimizing your nerve system for its integrity, most of the time, the kind of things that I hear from people, I do hear people tell me that they feel better physically. However, most often what I hear from people is, the stress that I'm under, I can handle it so much better than I would have if I had not done this. Life seems so much easier. Or even I had a car accident or a skiing accident, and I seem to recover markedly faster. Because when your nerve system has buffering for energy efficiency, then the things that happen to it, because look, inevitably, Jordan, things are going to happen, right? Things are going to happen in your life, and you don't really want them to stop happening because that will mean something else, right? But the thing is, how is your body able to navigate? What kind of bandwidth does it have to navigate things? What kind of resourcefulness? What kind of adaptive capacity does it have? And so really think of people should be thinking of their nerve system as their operating system. And do they want to play the game of life with an outdated operating system, or a compromised one, or one that's glitchy, or one that's crashed a few times? It doesn't have to hurt physically to know that it'd be good to have a supercomputer in. Your nervous system is much more than a computer. It's just an example. So, as I said, it's your conduit of consciousness. And it's also interacting with the fields around you. Also, think of it this way. We're very used to this concept of the cloud. We kind of take it for granted now that there's a cloud of information, and we have our own cloud on our cell phone, our own personal cloud with our own MiFi device or whatever it is. But we really take that for granted. It's kind of something we've just accepted, and we don't really know where the cloud is. But there's information I can pull that's related to me with a few touches of a button. How does a radio station work? And we remember the radio dials in the call. You turn the dial, and all of a sudden you have the hip hop station. Turn the dial different much, you have a heavy metal station. Turn the dial more, you've got the sappy love song station. Okay, whatever it might be, or the music station, God forbid. But when I turn the dial, I get that particular station. How does that happen? Look, a radio, like the old radio in your car, there's a filament in there that when you turn it, the metal filament changes in such a way that it's only going to get this certain frequency of light. That frequency of light is transmitted from elsewhere, but to get the light information, it has to be a certain tension on that filament, or a certain, right? And then actually the information of the heavy metal station is encoded in that light. And that makes it the heavy metal station. So here's the thing. Your nerve system works that way. You have your own personal cloud. And your nerve system is tuned into some aspect of your personal cloud. And depending on the shape, position, tension, tone of your nerve system, you're going to be getting one station versus the other. Okay? If you position your body, like this, hunched over, back hunched, head forward, shoulders down, you're going to be tuned into radio station WSUK. Okay? If you were in a different body position, innately you know that if I put my arms up, my shoulders back, an extension, head back, I'm going to be tuned into the radio station WJOY. However, if your nerve system's stuck on a particular station, it's going to get the full bandwidth of your experience. You're supposed to get the full radio dial of information at different times. When I was growing up, there was a movie, Christine. Stephen King book, Chris Stephen was a possessed car. And this guy had this car, and when it was possessed, it communicated by what kind of song it was going to play. So think about this. If you're in your vehicle, your body, and all of a sudden the doors lock, and you're going to have heavy metal, Metallica all the time, every day, 24/7. Now, as much as you may like Metallica, that's going to create a certain visceral response and life experience and limited range of expression of life. That's the thread of the cloud that you're receiving and able to receive. That's what happens when a nerve system's limited in its range of expression. You want to get the full bandwidth, you can't be locked into one station. And you want to get access for your whole cloud. And then also, you have your own personal cloud, but then there's the cloud of humanity, and the ability for your body to interface with the cloud of humanity is also having to do with your own radio, your own tuning system, your nerve system. So if your nerve system has less bandwidth, you may only get the station of, this is all I can do with my life. This is the type of home, the type of boyfriend or girlfriend, the type of car, the type of pain syndrome. These are my limitations relative to what vibrational thread your nerve system is able to tune in. You're much better off if you get the whole radio dial, whether you hurt or not. Also, again, hurting to be, there's different types of pain that a person can be experiencing. There can be the pain of not being enough. There can be pain of suffering. There can be the pain of not moving forward fast enough. There can be multiple types of pain. And it again comes down to what bandwidth do you have to process your information and energy cloud. Not only, so for example, one type of pain is the pain of avoiding suffering. Suffering is vital. If we think I've got to avoid suffering at all, good luck, you're not going to have too much growth. If you never were supposed to have suffering, people wouldn't go to the gym and wouldn't have kids. You're going to suffer during those things. And there's many gifts. Or there's pain of not being able to manage one's experience. That's a different pain. Or the pain of not making enough progress, or the pain of not knowing or giving your gifts or not receiving your gifts. And those being bound up with different neural patterns will show up in different aspects of a person's life. We call those a person's seasons, and that's their field of what aspect of their cloud they have enough energy to receive.
That's really interesting. And that's actually something you were talking about with me this morning, was with regards to the different seasons in the healing journey. So
That's true.
So maybe we could spend some time talking about that. Could you dive a little bit more into, kind of how you think about those seasons in someone's chiropractic journey?
Well, I'd like to talk about that, and really not only in their chiropractic journey, but really their life journey. Okay? Really their life journey. Chiropractic, their spinal nerve system, is a tool that can be utilized to amplify their resilience, their adaptability to change the seasons they're in. They're really 4 seasons. Just like there's LTE, 3G, 4G, 5G, there's things that you can do with 5G that you couldn't do with LTE, right? Or it'd be really hard to do, right? And we call these their 4 sacred seasons: discover, transform, and awaken. Discover, transform, and awaken. And realize there's a universal field However, in one season, relative to the energy available to the person, they're only going to experience that one particular season of life. At one temperature range, it's winter. And there are characteristics to winter. There's certain clothes you wear. There's certain types of food you'll eat. There's a temperature you expect it to be, right? There are characteristics of it. And a person's life, a person can be in the winter of their life. And there's certain characteristics to a person's winter of life. Like if you think of a person in their winter, what might that look like, Jordan? What would that feel like?
Loss, financial pain, physical pain, a time of kind of low growth.
There could be hibernation.
Yeah, definitely.
There could be slow. There can be less movement. They could be storing things. There also can be wisdom. Like if you think of wisdom, winter in terms of age, right? But at a certain energy state, following winter is always spring, right? After winter, at a certain temperature, you're like, oh, we moved from winter to spring. What happens? You wear different clothes. You're going to wear, shorts will come out, there'll be skirts, right? People will not have jackets on all of a sudden. Then at a certain temperature threshold, then you say it's summer. And there's a whole set of different, like, what's the energy of summer compared to winter?
A lot higher. A lot more active.
A lot higher?
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, or another thing, states of matter. So H2O, in one state it's ice, it's solid. Another state it's water. Another state it's steam. Same H2O. Your body, all cycles of life have different seasons. A caterpillar goes into a cocoon one season, and those are cycles of life. Is a caterpillar bad? It's just it's slow moving. Then it goes into a cocoon. To get out of the cocoon, like there's a change to go into the cocoon, a metamorphosis, and then to get out of the cocoon, it takes a certain level of energy, complexity to then become a butterfly. There's different organizational complex to that, and this is universal. So each season has influences communication, their experience, the type of resource the person has, type of healing they can do, the type of change they can have. Discover that season is the most stable, kind of like winter, has the least resources, the least bandwidth. Every single change will just could throw them into an injury, could throw them into a painful emotional state. They have to be hyper vigilant of their resources and what the world around them. They tend to see circumstances only as a problem. You're a victim of your environment. You have a little bit more energy. The circumstances can really be an opportunity for growth. Can be, how do we make an organizational plan? How can we make change through this? You'd be the same circumstances, but they can inspire people, find courage or tenacity, or have the resources to break through, make consistent change, and discover that season has to do with understanding, experiencing how we learn to defend ourselves, that when we decided that there was too much instability, we decided to hunker down. Look, the 2020 debacle that we just experienced, that I think our world's starting to come out of a little bit, we probably won't know for another 10 years. But what happened was there was a tremendous instability in the world. And a whole bunch of people decided you had to put on masks, not leave your house, because it was too much instability, too much scary stuff. So you got to stay inside because that stability by some were deemed safe. And so we're going to wall ourselves off. People do that with all kinds of things. They do it with relationships. They do it with finances. They do it with jobs. They say, you know what, we're going to go in the harbor on this one and not move anywhere. Different energy state, you know what? We're going to get outside. We're going to set sail. We're going to leave what we're doing, all right? When in Discover, we learn that we've protected ourselves to something we deemed harmful or painful. Somehow we've associated or conditioned or even imprisoned ourselves. And that imprisonment can be painful. It could be a painful focus, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And we had tried to avoid, we learned how we become disassociated with parts of our body because we blocked things off, we narrowed our focus, and it's a certain bandwidth. There's another season, as I said, transform. In transform, the season is that we need to make change. What do you do to make change? There's emotion, there's muscles, there's movement that maybe you didn't see in winter. Just like there's things that happen in spring, there's a vibrancy, but it really has to do with the bandwidth that your nervous system is capable of. What bandwidth? Are you at LTE, 3G, 4G, 5G? Now, get a little bit more bandwidth, kind of the butterfly coming out of the breaking through from the cocoon. That's another level of complexity. The level of organization complexity of a butterfly compared to a caterpillar is immense. A season of awaken, there's more free oscillators in a person's nervous system. There's greater coherence of communication between multiple ends. And there's an experience of effortless collaboration, of coherence, a recognition of the spiritual nature of life, and gratitude, enlightening others in love. And so here's what happens, is that what was seen as a circumstance that was painful at the season of Discover is now seen as if it was a gift, and how it really actually blessed their life to a whole new path. But really, if you talk about that with a person in the Discover season with that bandwidth, that actually may be insulting or painful that you actually discuss it. If you discuss with someone with a certain point of view that maybe there were things that happened in 2020 that weren't all on the up and up, you may be the devil to them, because how dare you, right? Regardless of what facts you give, because it's an instability that their stability can't accept. It's really just the thermodynamics of life. And a person's nervous system gives them a different bandwidth to navigate that. Now, here's the other thing. There's another season. Like I said, there's 4 seasons, just like Frankie Valli. Discover, transform, awaken, and integrate. There's another one. Integrate would be where you can have the conscious merging of 2 or more seasons. We can say, you know what? Yes, I can see the gift in all of this, and I also can see the pain that was there. I can also see the way that there's a need to transform it. And from a different energy state, they're all right. There's not a right and wrong. It's just a matter of what's the energy state.
And I think it's, you bring up so many beautiful, poignant points there. And, I think I can speak for myself and a lot of other folks I know, some of those most challenging, painful winter type seasons, right? Once you get past it and you realize what that experience was there to teach you, right? That kind of dark night of the soul experience, that you then look back on it and you are so grateful. And I can say some of the worst, times of my life have been, in hindsight, the absolute best, because it caused me to force myself out of those patterns, to really go deep and understand what is going on. I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of my own self-discovery happened during COVID, when you were forced out of those habits and then you start going inside on yourself. And then I think that eventually causes you to question maybe some of those things that, like you said, don't necessarily add up with broader society.
Now, there's an important point there that you said there that I want to make sure we cover. We talked about pain and getting rid of pain, whether it be chiropractic or acupuncture or relationship therapist or whatever it might be. That dark night of the soul, like if you were to look back, you get to a point where you say, wow, that was actually the biggest gift that I've ever had. It was so painful, it was so hard, but look what it's given me. And look at the growth. And when someone needs to be out of pain and you try to take them out of it, who are you to take that growth experience away from them? Because you may be taking away from them the biggest gift they have ahead. That doesn't mean you want people to suffer. At the same time, you don't have them stuck the way they are and keep repeating the same pattern.
Totally. And I'm sure that's something, I don't have any kids, but I know something that parents struggle with is kind of maintaining that balance of, you want your kids to be happy and joyous all the time, but they also have to make their own mistakes and learn to stand on their own 2 feet.
Right. And it happens with patients. We take care of, and can you fix me? Can you help me? Well, who am I necessarily to take that away? I want you to have more bandwidth. I want you to have the ability to facilitate you to a different state of being so that you can have the experience that you have, but also be able to have growth ahead, which has to do with your energy state, your resilience, your bandwidth. And as me, for a healthcare practitioner, my role and what I teach people around the world is how they can, in the face of uncertainty, in the face of instability, in face of storms, be able to get to have enough resources, enough energy that they can transcend and grow from it. And it's not trying to be cold. It's not trying to make a person stay in pain, but it's just simply that there's more than simply alleviating something for a quick fix. And hey, a quick fix is important at times. It could be life-saving, but if you don't make the changes that are needed afterwards, you're going to end up needing another quick fix pretty soon.
Yeah, and I love that you use the word transcend. I started transcendental meditation about 2.5 years ago, and one of the great overlaps I found with that in chiropractic is they're both so effective at dissolution of stress, right, and kind of staying more present. And so I think it just kind of gets back to your point of, right, it's about building these healthy lifestyles over time for your nervous system to expand that range of bandwidth, as opposed to this kind of instant gratification that society is always looking for, fix me and then I'm done and never coming back kind of thing.
Right. And that is the thing of Western versus Eastern thoughts relative to health and healing. And also, it's not necessarily either or, because guess what? You need to have a surgery. You better have it. If there's no other option, that's an incredible gift. And what do you do after the surgery to grow? Or are you just living the same life as you were before and you're going to be on the same path?
So, Dr. Danny, would you walk through what someone goes through when they're getting adjusted with you and kind of what how you think about what that patient needs?
That's a really good question. So here's the thing. Looking at a person as a whole person, bones, muscles, nerves, connective tissue. Sometimes people come into our care and they say, nothing's ever happened to me. Just yesterday or this week, all of a sudden I couldn't move my leg or I couldn't turn my head. And it just started this week. Nothing's ever been wrong in my life. And I just smile because you look at them and I'm on, their heads twisted like this, their shoulders up, they're twisted like this, and their hips coming over. But all this just started this week. And you're like, oh, really? Okay. Well, let's see how you're doing. And when we look at a person's body and nerve system, how I look at it is like their body is a puppet. It has threads. Think of a puppet, a marionette puppet, and Sound of Music, right? Okay, the one of the famous scenes with the goat herder. Okay, and the strings move the puppet, and what happens is it makes the shoulder come up, their feet dance, head move, and that's all fun. You have strings too. Your strings are your nerves. Actually, anatomists have said recently that you could take it's kind of a disgusting thought, you could take everything else away from a person and just their nerves and you still recognize them. That's how inundated you are with nerve tissue. Now, your threads are your nerves. You actually have 3 to 9 nerve fibers going to every cell of your body. It's a lot of nerve. Okay? And those nerves can fold and unfold and have tension traction. Your spinal cord itself, as I was teaching this weekend to doctors and students, has 5 to 7 centimeters, most people don't realize, to fold and unfold just in the spinal cord. So that when you turn your head or bring it up or down or move your leg or bend your torso, the spinal cord doesn't rip. Okay, it bends or twists. If you do a side stretch to one side, the cord actually unfolds like an accordion unfolding. So when we're assessing a person, we look at what's going on with the strings. What threads are contracted, pulled, bending, twisting. And the spinal cord anchors at the top and bottom of the spine so it doesn't fall out. Like it anchors at the top of the bottom. And so there's anchorage points that just like holding an accordion to either side, that then will make the person's body twist or pull, and you'll call that posture. But really their nerve system is the window, their posture is a window to what the nerve system's doing to their structure. Their posture is the window to what their nerve system's doing to their structure. And then they'll say, well, my teacher in school told me I was lazy. It's not that. You've coddled certain behavior experiences of your life, like the tuning of a radio station, and then locked into that particular pattern for whatever insult has happened. So when we're assessing a person, every visit, I'm looking at a range of 10 or 20 different indicators that have to do with what's going on with the threads and where can I not move a vertebra, but where can I find at one of those key segments that one of the key segments where the vertebra anchor or set the structural positioning, that I can find a point of peace. Yes, a point of peace. Most practitioners are going to the point of pain like we were talking about and try to fix it. Here's the thing. If there's a storm going on, where's the most peaceful area? Right. If a person's having a storm in their neck, I don't want to go to where it hurts. I want to go where there's the most peace and let the peace teach the distress who it really is. And so we analyze the threads of the puppet master of life that have moved a person's shoulder, their pelvis, their neck, that has also tuned them into a particular radio station. Maybe it's the sappy love song station from a breakup. And they're living their life through that like a C note in the back of a song that's just pressed down. And find a point of peace where just putting that pressure there becomes a force of instability that, just like the kid banging on the floor, says, Superman, what? And looks elsewhere. Squirrel? Okay? That then that point of peace can expand. So the pattern of the puppet has shifted. And then the more resilient the nerve system is, the more it can be less invested to the pattern that's held for days or months or years. Instead, it can visit there once in a while, but say, hey, I've got enough bandwidth, I don't have to live there. I remember what this is like. Maybe I'll stay there for a day or two or an hour, but you know what? I'm more than that. I know what that feels, I know what that looks like, and I can also go back to 5G.
And it's so funny what you were saying about posture being an indicator of what's going on with your nerve system, because it just immediately took me back to when I came in for the first time and did my assessment with Dr. Sarah. And like when she did all my tests, it was like clear that she was expecting where I was gonna, kind of shake out just from having watched me walk in and knowing my posture coming in. So it was pretty wild.
Yeah. Well, and I do that. I do that when people walk in every day, when they lay down. I can see as they're lying down before I touch them what their body's habituated. You always have to assess a number of physical things. However, you get some experience, you'll know what the person's saying or feeling. And often you'll ask something, is this what's going on? They'll say, how did you know? And it's really because reading their spine is like, I don't know, reading tea leaves or something. Like, I don't know anything about reading tea leaves, so I don't know if that's a good analogy. But you get the idea. You can know it's like different radio stations. I know they're tuned in to this particular station. And the more they're locked in it, the more ill their system. Here's the very important thing is stable is sick. Stable is sick. There's times where you need to heal, repair, hunker down, lick your wounds. However, eventually, after 2020, you have to get outside, right? Eventually, you have to do that. There are some people that are still locked in their homes. and may never change. And here's, and I'm just using that as an analogy. I'm not trying to make a political statement. It's a very visceral experience for people right now. Here's the thing. A stable nerve system is ill. The nerve system is supposed to have variability and dynamic. When we're assessing people with the different technologies, the objective things that we go along with our tools we use in terms of these 10 digits, our hands, they're really to see, is the system dynamic or ill, meaning static. A static system is ill because you're going to have a whole incredible amount of things that happen to you. If I reassess you with some of the technology we use 3 months later and the same pattern is there, that's a stick system. You've had weather changes, job things, more sleep, less sleep, exercise, and the same pattern of the nerve system, kind of like reading a person's heat pattern in like a movie, right? When they see this is the person's heat signature. If that signature is the same, you've been in and out of the shower, that's an unhealthy system. It shows signs of being dynamic. People know that. It's a very common thing now. I'm pretty sure you're aware of this heart rate variability. Heart variability is all of a sudden in a range. I was talking about this 20 years ago. Now it's on everybody's Apple Watch, and they're looking at it, and they're using Whoop and Aura, which is great. Those things are measuring the variability of your heart, the space or the beat, the space in between the beats, and those should be variable. The less variable, the more compromised your heart. It's actually very much tied to your nerve system. I published a research paper on this, that the less variable your heart, it's less dynamic. It's actually really, truly a predictor of disease, mental, emotional health, various heart conditions, weight gain, when there's a lack of variability. Things that impact for the positive are sleep, the type of care we do, various other types of chiropractic care, because it gets a greater bandwidth of a person's nerve system to coordinate their heart so it can be more variable. Ever hear of a marathon runner? Great shape, probably better shape than you and I, and all of a sudden drop dead of a heart attack? Or a college athlete who's in great shape, better shape again than you or I, and then fall over? And those things are horrible. I'm not making light. Most heart attacks in those situations, in fact, I've seen Thomas Cowan, Cowan, MD, who's a cardiologist, said that actually most heart attacks, period, are related to an imbalance in a person's central nerve system, where the sympathetic and parasympathetic are not managing stress, or not balanced or coordinated, that shows up as a person's heart getting further compromised. And then they put the stress on it of running or athletic perform, and that stress is too much, even though they have all other BMI, heart rate, pulse rate, all cholesterol being well, but it's that operating system of their heart and their nerve system not being dynamic enough. And so when we take care of people and say, I'm so much more peaceful, I handle stress better, it's that aspect of the relationship of their heart and their brain being more dynamic. Most people don't know that actually your heart has over 40,000 neurons. That's like a second brain. And that communication, that relationship of the coherence between their head and their heart is vital for them to adapt or dance in the rain as compared to hunker down.
Can I ask you a little bit more of a controversial question?
Sure, I'll do my best.
I appreciate it. And if it's not a road you want to go down, happy to edit it out after the fact. But I can't help myself because you brought up heart attacks and kind of sudden deaths. Do you have any concerns that we're seeing an increase in unexpected heart issues and heart attacks as a result of the mRNA vaccines that were rolled out over the last couple of years?
Absolutely. It's scary, and it's a big experiment that we all got exposed to. Some people wisely chose not to participate. Unfortunately, some felt the only way that they would be safe or stable was to participate in the experiment. In fact, I just saw that AARP is recommending an 8th booster shot. It's wild, right? And at the same time, you want to bless the people that feel that that's what they need to feel safe. And it's very scary. And you're going to see more and more of it. I think we're not going to see for decades to come, until decades to come, the impact that choice made. And I'm thankful there's people like Robert F. Kennedy and others that want to champion this cause. And the thing is, I heard RFK say, if I was, he said he would put, if he was a prosecutor, he would put Fauci behind bars. And that these are crimes against humanity. And from another energetic perspective, there are people like feel that this was needed to feel safe. That's the bandwidth they have, deal with the instability. And it's really a concern because, it truly has to do with, you're seeing now that Pfizer has also created medications to counter the heart concerns from the vaccine. It's scary. And, the reality is, it goes back to what my mom said, I want to put as little external man-made stuff in my body as possible. Are there times for those things? Yeah, and there's really great advancements that many of us can be grateful for and can be life-saving situations. And, I want to do as little of that as possible. If I have to do it, what do I have to change to move forward and continue to be more vibrant and need less of those things?
Yeah, totally. And I think that my personal story is very consistent with kind of the broader evolution it feels like we're seeing right now with people in the way that they approach health, in the sense that, I always believed the orthodoxy of Western medicine. I took the first 3 Pfizer vaccines without hesitation, but, a lot of synchronicities happened in my life during COVID, right, where I was introduced to the research of folks like Dr. Joe Dispenza. Dr. Bruce Lipton has been really instrumental to me. So I started opening up to the possibility that there is real medical, grounding, in fact, for a lot of these Eastern traditions, at the same time that I was exposed to Robert F. Kennedy's work and that kind of thing. And the idea that, maybe these things we're hearing from big pharma aren't as above board as some of us used to think. So I'd be curious, working in a modality of healing that has not always been accepted by the Western paradigm. Like, have you seen a pretty broad shift in the way that people approach chiropractic and are open to it since the pandemic?
That's an amazing phenomenon. So I know this has been a very spiritual time to work in the healing arts, period. It's really been an extremely spiritual time to work in the healing arts, period. When I went back into my office in the state of Colorado, we were forced to close. We were one of, I think it was 2 states that were forced to close as doctors of chiropractic. I think it was 2, us in Kentucky. And when we went back in, the gratitude was so high from people. I can't believe I had to go this long without seeing you. I've been under so much stress and all of that. And with it, I noticed an extreme shift to people valuing their health in ways that I had not seen in the prior 30 years interacting with people. And people switched their values for how, maybe this was a gift, switched their values or shifted them, maybe not completely, but there was a shift in values towards there's more to my health than how I feel. Look, we saw that they were stating outwardly that you could have no symptoms and have COVID. You could have no symptoms and be positive, which is in the face of everything people tend to believe. I mean, that's not necessarily scientifically unusual or new, but the public hadn't been broadcasted that message over and over again. And that you could also be close to someone that's positive for this and you could not have it transmitted based upon how your body was healthy. Things like weight, had big factor in terms of your your ability to be susceptible, and how many comorbidities. More comorbidities, the more likely you to not survive. And then all of a sudden there's a shift of like, well, this comorbidity thing must be important, regardless of you're talking COVID. There was a very much a shift in that part, good, of people realizing I've got to take care of or valuing their health in a different way.
That makes total sense, and that's beautiful to hear. And I can certainly attest to that being true of myself. Do you have any recommendations for folks like me who, maybe had the vaccines and are now more, concerned about the spike protein, like what they can do to treat that?
Well, one thing I would say absolutely is keep your nerve system at its best. I tend to think of less of treating something, like treat the spike proteins, as more as optimize something. Like, so, all right, I've got to put more attention to optimize my body so there's less inflammatory responses. And you can very simply do a quick search or AI thing of what are the things that create inflammatory responses. You have a whole laundry list that happens to be pretty much the standard American diet, right? Which is why Americans are so susceptible, a part of the picture, I should say, not why, but, we have such a high rate of obesity. Like, sugar creates inflammation, lack of sleep, right? The chemicals in our food, the detergents that we use, all of these things that we use, like, basically put yourself on an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Maybe bit by bit. Maybe, you know what? I'm going to reduce my dairy because that's an inflammatory thing. I'm going to reduce my sugar. I'm going to get myself 2 hours more of sleep. I'm going to put myself on a mission to optimize my body. See, here's the thing. I've had many, many times that someone will say to me in my office, well, I have stenosis, so what can I do about it? Or I have this blown disc, so, this is inevitable. Or, my uncle had cancer, so I'm just going to end up having cancer. That's the same question as a spike protein, which is, well, if there's a weak link in the fence, optimize the rest of the fence. So if you had cancer in your family, don't just succumb that you're going to have cancer. Find out all the things you can do that can reduce your cancer risk. And there's tons of literature on that. It doesn't mean it's going to cure it, but you're going to optimize your physiology. Most certainly, your nerve system is the thing that helps your body be anti-inflammatory. Because if your nerve system's like a glass that when you pour it, it's already full. That's what happens in inflammation. Your nerve system's already at the max, and you pour some water in, it just overflows. Well, you want your nerve system calm. So that's what you need to do. And relative to your health overall, say, you know what? I'm going to get rid of gluten. I'm going to get rid of dairy. I'm going to have, less chocolate. I'm going to do all these things. I'm not going to have refined sugar. I'll have stevia or whatever is the thing that's appropriate, better to do, because you get a whole bunch of conversation about which is good or which is bad. But I will tell you, you want to have less inflammation overall. And sometimes it's not good to just say, we're going to stop everything overnight, because it's like, that's like trying to drop everything and you just end up back on, you end up doing it all. However, what you can do is elimination thing and eliminate one thing. And then X amount of time, eliminate something else. You know what? I'm going to focus on my sleep. I'm going to really make sure I get my sleep to this many hours. You know what? Now I'm going to, you know what? I've been having 10 cups of coffee. I'm going to go to 1 or something like that, or whatever it is. And then chip away at the things that are destructive survival values. There's two things, constructive and destructive survival values. You want to stack the constructive. If you're worried about the spike protein and also being around people and it sloughing off to you, so here's the thing, you can either live in fear or you can live, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, which actually I think about that once in a while when you see what's happening in the world. I just want to go live in a cabin and not deal with it because it's kind of crazy, right? Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to stack the constructive things, exercise, my spinal nerve system healthy, electromagnetic, radiation minimized, whatever, decrease the destructive things. And that equation is a winning equation. But you also don't know with any one individual what thing will be the most significant change. On one person, it might be their weight. Another person, it might be gluten. Another person, it might be sugar. But your thing is, if concerned about your health and optimizing is increase the constructive, decrease the destructive, have an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, have your nerve system as coherent as possible. Because here's the thing with how this was research done with networks specifically, they found that it was not that healthy choices make healthy people. People tend to think, well, if I make the healthy choice, the exercise, the Pilates, the yoga, the gluten, whatever it is, that then I'll be healthy. Actually, there's a research study done specifically with Network Care with 2,818 people, and they found the quality of life changes. One of the things that was an artifact of the study they didn't necessarily expect to see was that as a person's nerve system got healthier, they were able to make healthy choices that they were not able to do more. There was a percentage of people that started moving without advice to a vegetarian lifestyle, that started to move towards doing more meditation or more yoga, that they were able to make choices because their nerve system was more coherent. They're able to listen to the little voice, they're able to listen to their body's responses, to say, hey, this doesn't work for me, and make change that before they weren't able to change.
Totally.
So healthy people make healthy choices rather than healthy choices just make healthy people.
Yeah. It's so cool hearing you describe that too, because I've noticed since I started my chiropractic care how much more I'm able to notice the energy that gets tensed up in my right leg in particular, and so it's cool to just be able to see that, where it's like, now that I, first you're aware of it, and then I'll notice like when I'm out walking, like my body's like readjusting itself. It's like, hey, you've been in this wrong posture your whole life. This isn't right. Like, we're like, figure it out.
Right. But the thing is, what happened is most people are not aware. They're not aware in the first place. And that not being aware in the first place keeps them bound in different pairs of the physiology, as well as the entanglement of things that all come from what's bound.
Yeah. I mean, and it's crazy. Like my understanding is that, the Western medicine paradigm is still teaching Cartesian duality and that there's no mind-body connection, which is absolutely insane.
Right. Absolutely. There's a book that I'll recommend. It was a book that was a paradigm-changing book for me, which is by Morris Berman. It's a book. I read it in the late 80s, early 90s. The Reenchantment of the World. The Reenchantment of the World. And in this book, they talked about how up to the scientific revolution that we saw the world as alive. And he called it animism. And it was a very deep philosophy, a lot of depth, anthropology book about humanity. And that actually, as we did that and we walled ourselves off to the fact that there's so much enchantment in our world. It wasn't necessarily talking about a deity as much as being enchanted with the divine and the spiritual and the magic all around us, and how we separate ourselves from that through the scientific revolution, and he goes through the quotes, and you see Newton's wording change over the years as he and his body and posture and how he looks change as rigidity came into how they saw the world. And then you see in the quantum realm, we have scientists saying that space and time merge, and that there's a wormhole, and that what we're seeing here is not solid matter, that's mostly empty space and such. It's a completely a rebirth or a reenchantment of the world that's happening. And maybe what's happened through the last few years will be a part of that reenchantment as there's new growth. I have to think, I tend to think towards the positive, and maybe it's a naivete. I don't think it's naivete, but a hopeful optimism that there'll be growth and gain, but with it, a new way of looking at life. Look, we've had a change in consciousness. I don't know if you know this. We've gone from the first tier of consciousness where there's a dawning of a second tier of consciousness. And this first tier of consciousness involved all things being bound. Wealth came from owning the oil, owning the land, controlling what's mine, fixing things, repairing things, bringing the world into submission. And the second tier of consciousness, you'll notice that people are gaining from the unbound, from resources that we didn't even know that were there. Look, Airbnb created a tremendous amount of wealth from unbound property access that was all around. They tapped into it that people did not even know was there. So did Uber. Created jobs from jobs, resources, opportunities, growth, tools that people could use from what? The space between vehicles that were sitting just around. That's accessing the unbound to liberate it for people to gain. And you're going to see more and more of that. People can make more doing a podcast or an Instagram than getting a degree. Do they have their skill sets to do it? Sure. But they could actually get more views or than a broadcasting station that's had a lot of property, a lot of resources tied up to broadcast. And that's part of why we had all the things about the censorship, because you can't control the message when everyone's a messenger. And that's part of the shift to an unbound world. And I'm really curious what that looks like as that gets ushered in. And I think part of what's happened in the last few years is part of that transition. Even though it might be messy, it's kind of the season of transform.
It's kind of that collective dark night of the soul.
Yep. But I have to hold the optimism that there's growth that's going to be really beautiful and miraculous to see.
I totally agree. And I think we're even seeing it right now, it's kind of that whole always darkest before the dawn type situation.
Yes, I agree.
Dr. Danny, this has been such an amazing conversation. For folks who are maybe in the Colorado area, what can they do to learn more about network wellness?
Actually, go to boulderchiropractor.com or networkwellnesscenters.com. And we're in the heart of Boulder. And, our role is to connect you to more. And if you know there's more in your life, more joy, more energy, more of you that you can be, and you're craving more.
Yeah. It's well worth the time. I drive up 3 times a week from Denver to Boulder for it, and it's been awesome. Dr. Dane, I don't know if I told you, but there was one time a couple weeks ago where I was doing 2 adjustments in a day, and so I just I decided to go wait and meditate in between my adjustments, and I had this experience where energy was flowing, and I felt myself. I didn't actually astral project, but I felt like I was on the precipice of that, and I've never done that before, so. It's working, and something's happening in there for sure.
Well, vibration's changing.
Definitely.
Glad to care for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. This has been such a blast, and I will see you soon. This past weekend, I had the privilege of attending the Mile High Chiro Conference, hosted by Dr. Knowles and the Network Wellness team. During the conference, Dr. Patrick Gentempo emphasized the principles of chiropractic. There's a universal intelligence in all matter. That intelligence is continually giving matter all of its properties and actions, thereby maintaining it in existence. This profound knowledge was understood by the ancient wisdom traditions. They are exemplified by the principle of natural law, known as Hermes in Greek cosmology, Mercury in Roman, and Thoth in Egyptian. Hermes is considered the father of the sacred sciences, including medicine. Hermes' mastery of human health is demonstrated by the object he carries in his left hand, the caduceus. You may be unfamiliar with this object by name, but you absolutely know it by symbol. Dr. Joe Dispenza describes him becoming supernatural. In Greek mythology, Hermes was a messenger of the gods who could move in and out of earthly and divine realms. He was considered a god of transitions and dimensions, as well as a guide to the afterlife. His main symbol was the caduceus, which consists of two snakes wrapped around a rod, the top of which unfolds into wings or birds. The caduceus, which Hermes used as a staff, is often considered a symbol of health. Do you think those snakes moving up the staff represent the movement of energy up the spine from the body to the brain, and the wings the liberation of the self when the energy arrives at the pineal gland to signify enlightenment? The crown represents our highest potential and our greatest expression of the divine when we activate our pineal gland, represented by the pine cone. The crowning of the big self is the conquering of the little self. End quote. The caduceus, and its derivative, the rod of Asclepius, can be found all over our world in association with organizations dedicated to human health. This includes the logos of Blue Cross Blue Shield, the U.S. Army Medical Corps, and the National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians. Yet in this era ruled by the dogma of scientific materialism, we've lost our understanding of the esoteric meaning contained in its symbolism. The caduceus is a symbolic representation of a perfectly functioning spine and nervous system. It demonstrates profound knowledge which the ancients knew, but which we have forgotten. Namely, that our nervous system is capable of regeneration, and that our body has the innate ability to heal itself from disease. Western civilization has been taught that our system of allopathic medicine is the pinnacle of human health ever achieved by our species. But does the evidence match that theory? To cite Dr. Casey Means, 74% of American adults are overweight or obese. Close to 50% of children are overweight or obese. Compared to 120 years ago, when someone was obese, there were case reports written about it. 77% of young adults are unfit to serve in the military. 50% of American adults have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. 30% of teens now have prediabetes, a condition that no pediatrician would have seen in their lifetime just 50 years ago. 18% of teens have fatty liver disease, a disease that used to only be found in late-stage alcoholics. Young adult cancer rates are up 79%, and this is the first year in American history we're estimated to have over 2 million cases of cancer. 25% of American women are on antidepressant medication. 40% of 18-year-olds have a mental health diagnosis. We have the highest infant and maternal mortality rate in the entire developed world, despite spending 2x on infant maternal care than any other country. Autism rates in kids are now 1 in 36, up from 1 in 1,500 in the year 2000. In California, autism rates are 1 in 22. Autoimmune diseases are also at peak rates. Infertility is going up 1% per year, and sperm counts have been going down 1% per year since the 1970s. 26% of women have polycystic ovarian syndrome. And on and on and on. What the hell is going on? Is it possible that we've been deceived by a scientific technological elite? That our pharmaceutical companies determined long ago there's a lot more profit in keeping us sick than there is in healing us? That they've used those profits to capture our medical schools, our regulatory agencies, our food and water supply, and our health insurance companies? As depressing as those statistics are, I'd emphasize that it's always darkest before the light. The devastation and deceit brought on the American public during the COVID-19 pandemic by the medical establishment has woken us up to the precarious state of our healthcare system. And God willing, this upcoming presidential election will see heroes of human health like Dr. Casey Means, her brother Callie Means, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. come in to make America healthy again. To drive out the vipers from the HHS, the CDC, the FDA, the NIH, and NIAID, and to ensure these agencies work for the benefit of the people, not the benefit of Big Pharma. to clean up our food, water, air, and medicine, and to stop systematically poisoning the population. In making America healthy again, we can also start to make America great again. This slogan of President Trump's is not a dog whistle for racism or colonialism or white supremacy or misogyny, as the Democratic Party elites and their conduits in the media would have you believe, as I once thought to be the case. Rather, it's a call to action, a reminder of the infinite possibility of the human individual, of our latent potential for self-actualization. I believe that humanity is at the precipice of a massive paradigm shift in evolution, where we throw off the yoke of busted theories like Newtonian physics, materialist reductionism, Cartesian duality, and Darwinian evolution, where we remember that consciousness is all there is, the fundamental force of our universe and of human physiology. As I've discovered my Dharma in this lifetime, I've recognized my purpose is to help revitalize the Hermetic philosophy and to communicate its principles to modern society. In the past, I've discussed a tattoo I have on my right forearm of a piece of sacred Egyptian art titled Hermes Standing Upon the Back of Typhon. I discovered this piece in Manly P. Hall's seminal book of Hermetic wisdom, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. To quote Hall's description, Hermes, as the personification of universal wisdom, is here depicted with his foot upon the back of Typhon, the vanquished dragon of ignorance and perversion. To the Egyptian initiates, Typhon, the devourer of souls, signified the lower world which swallows up the spiritual nature of the individual who, being imperfect, is forced to descend from the higher spheres and to be reborn into the physical universe. To be swallowed by Typhon, therefore, signifies the process of rebirth from which man can only release himself by vanquishing his mortal adversary. In one hand, Hermes carries the caduceus, a winged rod with two fighting serpents entwined about it, in the other, the immortal emerald, upon whose surface was inscribed in raised letters the sum of philosophy. The figure wears the ancient Egyptian Masonic apron according to the pattern discovered by Belzoni, the eminent Egyptologist. The two small circles contain the forms and symbols most closely associated with Hermes. In the upper circle is the ibis, whose curious characteristics have caused it to be particularly associated with the medical art. In the initiation ceremonies, the Egyptian priests wore masks in the form of the ibis head to signify that they represented the attributes of Thoth or Hermes. The lower circle contains the dog, an animal always associated with Hermes because of its intelligence and devotion. Upon the Hermes appears the uraeus, the secret symbol of the constellation of Scorpio, which represents the regeneration of the same powers that in the form of the dragon lies helpless under his foot. The scarab over the heart of Hermes represents the presence of the spiritual and regenerative light within his own soul. The collar typifies by its circles the orbits of the heavenly bodies. The 3 points of the tail of Typhon, which end in arrows, indicate the 3 destructive expressions of universal energy: mental, moral, and physical perversion. The entire diagram signifies mastery through the regeneration of the body, the illumination of the mind, and the transmutation of emotions. End quote. America and the world today are undergoing a major realignment, not just of political orientation, but of scientific thought, of alchemical discovery, and of spiritual evolution. True masters of the healing arts, like Dr. Knowles, are at the knife's edge of ushering in this paradigm shift, and I'm honored to be a witness to their magic. As we rediscover humanity's purpose on this earth, I suspect we'll find that as our individual and collective consciousnesses evolve, so too will our rate of evolution increase. That we'll realize life is not suffering, life is bliss. That we are here on an initiatic path towards the elimination of the mind, regeneration of the body, and transmutation of the emotions. On this journey, by healing and refining our nervous systems, we can discover, transform, awaken, and integrate man the physical and man the mental with man the spiritual.